It's been 20 years since Rob Zombie had his feature film debut. So let's go back and take a look at future Rob Zombie movie tropes, like rednecks, crude humour, over-the-top gore, and his wife's insufferable baby voice and constant giggling. Rewind those DVD players back to 2003 with House of a Thousand Corpses. Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Rewind Reviews, where we go and look at a cult classic through fresh eyes. And this week we're looking back at A House of a Thousand Corpses because it's the 20th anniversary. As aforementioned, this is Rob Zombie's feature film debut. Originally this film wrapped up and it was done filming, it was ready to go in 2000, but wasn't released until 2003. We open the film on old monster movie footage, grainy VHS, and horror paraphernalia, cause Rob Zombie got a Rob Zombie. It's Halloween Eve in 1977, and we're introduced to a gas station owner and sideshow attraction, Captain Spaulding. Here played devilishly charismatic by the one and only Sid Haig, for the role that he'll most likely be remembered for. Two redneck hillbillies crash the gas station and try and rob it with a couple of shotguns. Then Captain Spaulding gives them some 6-gauge justice. Then we introduce the most annoying foursome ever. We have Dwight Schrute here, who at first you think is going to be the hero of the story. Then we get the most insufferable, annoying arsehole that no one would ever be friends with here or date. But it's early 2000s horror movie, so douchebags gotta be represented. And two chicks. That's it. At this point of the film anyway, they're just two chicks, the girlfriends. All they do is roll their eyes, bitch and moan and wince. They arrive at Captain Spaulding's gas station, and Captain Spaulding takes them on a little ghost tour where they're introduced to a local psychopath legend called Dr. Satan. Captain Spaulding writes some directions out for the foursome here, the 20-somethings, points them in the right direction to where Dr. Satan was last seen, which can only go well. There they bump into Sherry Moon Zombie, who's playing a Sherry Moon Zombie kind of character here by the name of Baby. This is a character we'll get very familiar with every Rob Zombie movie. She's flirty, she's trashy, she's antagonistic, and she constantly speaks in a high-pitched, little girly voice and giggles at absolutely everything, which never gets old. We then see Baby's brother blatantly shoot out the tyres of this 20-something's car, so you know where this film is heading. They're obviously getting led into a trap here. Then they rock up to the creepiest house ever, where then they introduce to the diet version of the Sawyer family. We meet Stifler's mum, Grandpa Simpson, Lurch Kruger, Grizzly Adams, and the VIP and patriarch of this family, Bob fucking Mosley, playing a more charismatic version of Charles Manson. Things get weirder, things get wilder, things go tits up, and then the tomfoolery begins. Things get really unsettling, really creepy, and really tense. Then the next day, two cops are sent out to search for this missing foursome, and being police officers in a Rob Zombie horror movie, this can only go well. This is clearly Rob Zombie's love letter to films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Hills Have Eyes. The film is shot in full ADHD, with more Dutch angles than a 60s Batman TV show movie marathon with the camera operator on crack. It's a taste of things to come from Mr. Zombie. We get foul-mouthed hillbilly rednecks here, spitting out the most juvenile jokes that would even make a 10-year-old wince. Gore galore, very little storyline, and Sherry Moon Zombie constantly speaking in a high-pitched little girly voice and giggling at fucking everything. It really is hard to differentiate the characters that Sherry Moon plays in all of her husband's films. She pretty much plays the same character, but I will give her credit for her performance in Lords of Salem. I thought it was much more subtle, much more subdued, and I actually bought that she was a recovering addict. But I think it's her husband's writing and directing that makes it all wacky and silly and just pushes things to the limit and dials it up to 11. She needs more roles like Lords of Salem, much more subtle, in that sort of vein. It shows in that film, I think, that she has the chops to actually deliver a decent performance. But don't worry about nuance and characterization. Here, have some wacky transitions. There's a buttload of them in this film as well. We get grainy VHS footage, negative filters galore, split screens, and ominous horrific dialogue. Universal Studios thought that a musician who exploited the horror genre to market his music would be the perfect person to direct the scariest horror movie of all time. That is, until they saw the movie. It's no secret that after a cheeky test screening, the head of Universal went to Rob Zombie and gave him more money to clean up the film, or make sense of it, or cut out heaps of gore. Rob then went away, did make a new ending, and the studio still didn't like it. This is obvious upon reflection now, watching this film 20 years later, because the third act of the film is a completely different movie. Like, the first 3/4 are like a Texas Chainsaw Neon Nightmare, coming across as a bit of a Tales from the Crypt kind of movie. But the finale is sort of like a Resident Evil-esque gauntlet horror film, sort of a mix between From Dusk Till Dawn and Beetlejuice. But I will say, though, the final act of the film, the gauntlet, was very well designed, and I love the design of Dr. Satan himself. But again, it feels like a completely different movie. However, I would prefer to see a whole feature film with the style of the third act. Also, in hindsight, I will say, I remember this film being a lot worse. It's not as bad as I remember it. I hated this film when I saw it back in 2003. I was a huge horror movie fan, of course. I was a huge Rob Zombie fan. I thought, what a perfect marriage, much like the way Universal thought. But I tried to like it back then. I was forcing myself to like it. I kept watching it and watching it and watching it, but I just fucking hated it. But, like I said, in hindsight, I've softened on the film, and my opinion has changed. I think it's fine, it's okay. I think a lot of that has to do with, obviously, hindsight. I've seen a lot of absolute garbage movies, and this ain't in that ballpark. If I'm honest, this is probably the best looking Rob Zombie film, stylistically speaking, besides The Devil's Rejects, of course. And on that note, this is the first of a trilogy. Don't think it was planned as a trilogy, we just ended up with one. But this being the first installment, and the second installment, The Devil's Rejects, which I think hands down is Rob Zombie's best film all round. Don't know if it was a fluke or the stars were aligned, but everything about that film is great. I really like it. It's a really good sort of grindhouse 70s desert road horror movie. But the third film? Eesh. The less said about that, the better. Sid Haig is clearly having fun with the Captain Spaulding character, chewing up the scenery like it's Hubba Bubba Bubblegum. And like I said before, this will be the role that he's remembered for. R.I.P., sir. It's funny when you revisit a film 20 years later, how your opinion changes of it. Obviously, you've seen a lot throughout that period, you've grown as a person, and yeah, my opinion has changed on this. I think it's just okay fun. I guess that's the whole point of these rewind reviews, I guess. And it swings the other way as well. A film that you used to love because of nostalgia goggles, and like now you watch it back, you're like, this is not good at all. That happened to me recently with rewatching Footloose. I was like, oh, this is a classic. Why? It's terrible. Sorry, Star-Lord. This is in no way a great movie, far from it. But like I said, it's okay fun. Because hindsight is 20/20, and I've seen modern Marvel movies. Anyway, guys, that's my review of A House of a Thousand Corpses, the 20th anniversary. Write down if you've seen it, if you're a fan of it, and what is your favourite Rob Zombie movie? And of course, you made it this far into the episode, please give me a thumbs up, because your love and support keeps me going, because I just love movies, and I assume you do as well. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe icon, because I give it episodes weekly, and I'll see you back here next week for the next review, and until then, stay spooky, kids.